Hi, my name is Sarah, and this is our little baby girl, and I gave birth to her 3 weeks ago today on June the 12th at 9:20 a.m. in the bathtub in our home. It happened really quickly, really fast. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and was already in transition mode, and she was like ready to come out. I think I was probably in labor the night before, but I didn't really notice because I was so used to having back pain and to having cramps and to being uncomfortable. So I would just kind of attributed that to being uncomfortable. And then during the afternoon, the night before, or the day before, on June the 11th, my mucus plug started to come out, and I thought, oh, okay, not going to get excited. I'm just going to relax. And, who knows? It could be 3 weeks from now. It could be tomorrow. But it's probably, I just had a feeling that it wasn't going to be until after my due date, which was on June the 22nd. I went to bed, and then in the middle of the night, it was like 4:30, I woke up to have really intense pains in my lower stomach. And I had always thought that a contraction would feel like an undulation of pain, rolling down your uterus, and it didn't feel anything like that. It was just like someone was grabbing me around the waist really tight with a, pliers or something, and it was really intense. And I looked at Ash and I said, I can't sleep through this. If this is early labor, then this is going to be a long day because it's really intense. Or in Peachtree City with Ash's family, his mom.
Hey, I'm Papa Ash.
That said, I am.
Oh. Yeah, it was kind of surreal because it happened like at 4:30 in the morning, and her water broke, and kind of getting out of bed, not really, we didn't both sleep very well that night. And so I was kind of in denial for the first hour or so. I'm thinking that, this isn't happening. We didn't have the pool yet, so how could this possibly be happening? We're not ready. And about an hour or two into it, I started to realize, she's in labor. So I started timing the contractions, and I didn't really study a whole lot about pre-birth or anything. Sarah I felt she knew everything that she needed to know. I more studied, in case things went wrong, and I felt really safe about that, So I realized that it was more just my job to just be there and support her and kind of just witness the whole thing. I didn't want to. She wrote up a very detailed birth plan and said that she didn't want a lot of numbers and times and intervention. So I kind of had my phone on the side, checking the time and just making sure that I wasn't telling her every 5 seconds that this is what was going on. So I just kind of felt like I was this person in the background that was there in case anything happened. So I was just mopping things up and trying to see what was going to happen next.
5 o'clock, I woke up, went to the bathroom, came back, and then I laid in bed and we were looking at each other, and she took her little fist and broke my water, and then it all began. Lots of those intense contractions, which really just felt like really intense cramps. And 5 o'clock, and I got kind of sick. I went to the bathroom, and then went and got in the shower and just let the hot water on my back. And Ash we have a big yoga ball, and we put that in the shower that we have upstairs. And I leaned over that and just went through all these contractions in the hot water. And I was a little bit, not concerned, but I was a little bit surprised that they were happening really quickly, because he was sitting on the other side in the bathroom timing them, and they started at about 5 minutes, and 45 minutes later they were down to 3.5 minutes apart and lasting about 45 seconds.
When I realized that she needed a tub, I went downstairs and just started running the water, and she came down a little bit later, and we had some guests here that were kind of coming in the bathroom, where the one lady came inside the bathroom, or tried to come to the bathroom, and just trying to like field all that. So I guess I felt my role was just to not have her be interrupted, because my understanding is that the way the hormones work and the way that that happens is that it's very natural, and the only thing that will really screw that up is if the mom feels frightened or if she feels unsafe or anything like that. So my job was just to make everything safe, and so.
In my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, this is early labor, and I don't know if I can handle, these intense contractions that were taking up all my focus, all of my energy. I couldn't talk, I could barely breathe. Like, one of the things that felt the best during these contractions was holding my breath and not talking and not breathing. So it was taking a lot of my energy, and I didn't realize that I was that close to the end. I thought it was the beginning, so I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through another, 15 or 20 hours of this. Like, a lot of first-time moms go through really long labors.
Yeah, everything was going fine, and then I think at one point Sarah got really nervous about, and I got nervous too, because she was like, I don't know if I can do this, and she's like, take me to the hospital, like, give me the drugs, and, the stuff that I did read said that she would say that, and so I just kind of ignored her. And then she said it again, like about 20 minutes later, so I ignored her again.
He just stood there and held the space really well, and I think he knew intuitively that everything was going to be great, and so he just let me go through the process as I needed to.
And then the third time I was like, maybe that's when I started like to doubt what we were doing. I'm like, this is crazy. Why did we even think that we could do this? We're just two, lay people when it comes to, the medical profession. And so at that point I said, well, do you really want to go to the hospital? Think about that, like what that would entail. Everything you said, you didn't, you're going to have to make all these decisions and say all these things that you don't want to happen at the hospital. And as I'm saying that, she goes into another contraction.
Then I started having the pushing contractions, which are, a lot of women say, like, they feel the urge to push or they feel pressure. And for me, having gone through the birth so far uninterrupted and without any intervention, the pushing wasn't something that I was doing voluntarily. It was involuntary. It was like throwing up, like that sensation of something coming up, and you just hold on and grunt through it, and your body's going to take over. And it was the exact same thing, but with her coming down. And I even tried to push like on my own at one point, and I couldn't do it. My body was like, was taking over.
And I knew at that point that she wasn't going to the hospitals because, she'd probably have the baby on the way, because at that point the contractions were like 2 minutes apart.
And this is, I guess it's called the fetal ejection reflex, which can happen sometimes when you don't have, there's no intervention, and your body's allowed to, to run its natural course. And so I went through maybe 10 of those, like holding onto the tub, and they were so much less painful than the cramps, the contractions. And I knew she was coming down, and I just let her come down, and I would grunt and yell and make noise when I would go through it. And then about 10 of those later, I could feel her head, and was really amazed that it was happening so quickly. And so I put my hand down, and I could feel her head there, and it was just really, it was amazing to feel.
She started going into the final phase of, when the baby started to crown. She asked me if there was a mirror in the house. I'm thinking, we don't have a mirror in the house. I have a huge mirror, but I can't bring it in the bathtub. So I went upstairs and I grabbed the only DVD I could find. It was the Bruce Almighty DVD, and I brought it down and I put it in the water, and I could see, her little head, her little, like, just like that. And I knew that she was coming really soon.
It just kind of changed the mode of where we were. It went from like really intense to a lot lighter. So then the rest of the contractions just pushed her out, and there were probably another 8 or 10 of those, and really intense, like, grunting and trying to hold my body and breathe through those, which I was able to do, so that I didn't push her out too fast. And her head came out, and she was under the water, and we saw that the cord was around her neck, which is called a nuchal cord. And Ash is standing behind me, like kind of over me, and I have my hand like down next to her, and I knew that everything was going to be all right, and that it was, all very normal, and waited for another 2 contractions. I had one more contraction. She kind of went in and came back. She went out and came back in. And then I had one more because she kicked me. I think she was trying to get out of there. She's like, time for me to leave, make my exit. And so she kicked me, and I had an immediate another one, and then her shoulders twisted and her whole body came out.
Her head popped out, and she was underwater facing away from me, and that was the only other time that I had a little, like, oh, wait, she's underwater. But I knew as long as the cord was attached that she was fine, but the cord was wrapped around her neck. And I thought maybe it was pinched or something like that, because that was her little lifeline underwater. And so I had that little moment of like, oh, because I think naturally when you see someone underwater, you think, oh, they're not breathing or whatever. But so I just kind of like, that was my role, I guess, too, is just not to panic. And I thought as long as I kept cool and held that space, for Sarah and for the baby, then that was my job. So it wasn't really anything that I had to do. And then I'd also read in the emergency manual that like within 2 contractions, if the head's out, within 2 contractions, her whole body will be out. And so sure enough, 2 contractions, boom, she pops out. And I think we were both kind of like, oh my God, here she is. And we were trying to like hold her, and I was just like, let's just take a second. And we didn't have to unwrap the cord immediately. Just like it was loose, and I just kind of wanted to take a moment, and like bring her into the world. Her eyes were huge, adrenaline was pumping for all of us, and she just was staring out into space. And so I got right in her face and introduced myself, and then unwrapped the cord and put her on Sarah's chest, and she started breathing immediately, and then started nursing within like 15 minutes.
And Ash grabbed her and put her in my arms, and I held her while he moved the cord, and she was cooing and coughing and making noises, and from the immediately, and it was so amazing. But it's crazy, it's really intuitive, but I don't forget. Free birth is a term that's used for, also called unassisted childbirth. And some women use the term unassisted because there's no intervention. There's no hospital intervention. There's no intervention from a midwife. There's no one in between you and you birthing your baby as a woman. And I like the term free birth because to me, unassisted birth, I don't really believe that it's unassisted. I believe that, the universe was out there helping us, that this little angel was assisting. Like I was assisting, Ash, my partner, was assisting. All the support in the community that I've received, and all the wonderful women and people and stories that I've read about birth, that was all assisting the process. So I just don't like that term. But to me, free birth is, it's free of unnecessary intervention. I chose to have a free birth because I didn't want to have all these different medical interventions when bringing our daughter into the world. There's so many, birth has become such a medicalized event and an emergency in a lot of cases that I think a lot of people forget that it is the most natural process of processes, like that women's bodies were made to have children, and and it's very normal, it's very natural to go through that, and that we don't need the drugs, we don't need the interventions, we don't need people, all up on us trying to figure out what's going on all the time. I think if you're healthy and if you have a low risk, meaning you're healthy and you're not a high risk pregnancy, then I think that having a birth like that is really important. And I think that the medical system and the hospital system has gotten way too involved in the process. You little squeaker.
We went to a birthing center in Asheville, and then we started looking at midwives, and then I was more just listening to what Sarah was telling me, and the more that I heard, and the more that I actually went through the process with her, I realized that it's all about non-intervention, and that even the midwives are really held to this code of the allopathic medicine of like sonograms, checking for dilations every hour. And the more I learned through this indie birth site, this free birth site with Sarah, about how important it is to just not intervene with something that's sacred and that personal, For me, it was just, yeah, it was like, it's kind of like the decision I made, 8 years ago to eat differently and change the lifestyle. It's like once you learn that there's another way to do it, and you realize that the other way that people were doing it before is irrelevant. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like once you learn the truth, then the thing that was there before just seemed ridiculous. And so for me, there was no other option at that point. And so I felt, okay, well, we just need to have Sarah be as healthy as possible and have a backup plan.
I was afraid. I thought that during the birth that I had planned for this. I was, intending on doing a free birth, and there were a couple of moments when I was afraid, when the intensity of the contractions was so much that I thought that I couldn't do it if I was going to be doing it for several hours. But I didn't realize, because I wasn't in that part of my mind, that it was only going to last for just a couple of hours, and then I was really close to pushing her out. So there were a couple of moments where I was not panicky scared, but where I was afraid of just the uncertainty and the intensity, and if I could handle it. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned through this birth was that I trust myself intuitively a lot more than I gave myself credit for, and that I need to work on learning how to let that trust come through, because my body does really know what's best, and I learned that through this experience.